and which are very real. So since we spoke about real scenarios, it's time for us to really get to look at some of the actual case studies. So you heard from experts, Nivarti speaking about business-driven DevOps and from his own experience of what he's done in Society General and some of the other initiatives as a transformation lead. You heard from Rajat around the importance of culture, again, having done culture transformation in consulting. And Akhil really speaking about the importance of value stream architecture, somebody who's really a core architect in his heart and how he looks at it. Now, how can you see this in action? So we want to really present to you a couple of case studies where some or all of these parts would have done in different manner. And so to get that across to you, I invite over Deb. Deb has really done a driven full-fledged transformation for a client, and he's really going to give us a lot of information from a very practitioner's perspective of how some of these have been brought to life. So over to you, Deb.
Thank you, Anand. Good afternoon, everyone. It's really a pleasure kind of talking to all this audience and bringing what we spoke to life, right? So before we get in, I just want to remind what Rick said, right? Start thinking small, right? Culture change, right? And Rajat talked about culture, and then Akhilesh talked about architecture. So when you look at this, what industries are looking at, why they are transforming, right? And really the need of the hour is how do we move fast, and we fail fast, fail safe, right? And though if you look at this story that I'm going to talk in next 10-15 minutes, this case study, this is exactly how our industries are looking at. Rick gave you some of the market intelligence as well. So if we move on to the next slide, so these are the business challenges our industries are facing today. They need speed. Competition is everywhere, and every industry, call it a telco, pharma, any industry you look at, they want to stay at the top. They want to beat the competition, and speed is key. Quality, they want while they want to achieve things faster, they want to achieve things better. The qualities, security comes into very well positioned here, right? So they want better quality, secured things, and then with a cost effective, I would say. I would not say the labor arbitrage has gone away. With a cost effective value for money. So when you talk about speed, right? How can somebody launch a feature to the customer or deliver a goods to the customer kind of fast? Amazon, for example, same day delivery, right? And looking at that, when you talk about quality, when you look at the model where we used to have 6 months, 8 months delivery process, it's the before the product gets into the user's eyes, it is too late, right? It's already 4 months gone. So that's where the agile came into picture, and things became more kind of fast, and really iterations after iterations, and the users were able to see something real time in 12 hours, 24 hours, and then make changes. And definitely I'll talk through some of the things where we help some of our customers bridge the cost, quality, and speed. So if you go to the next slide. So these are some of the findings, and it will very well resonate with everybody, all the practitioners that are there in this call. So we looked at, imagine it is a very large transformation, right? So imagine a customer being purely in a waterfall model. This is a transformation which includes delivery model transformation, bringing in DevOps, not only DevOps, bringing in DevSecOps. So I'll talk about how we have put in security within DevOps, right? And then a journey to cloud. And then last but not the least is how how we have made the application nimble by containerizing them and moving them from a monolith architecture to a microservice architecture, right? So starting with the delivery model, this is where the biggest challenge is, and the industry's face is culture, mindset, right? Moving from a long waterfall model to how can we think small? How can we think small to bring it to the customer? Rather than building a big, huge product and then thinking whether it will go well or not, how can we build the blocks? And those building blocks generated how we move from a waterfall to agile. And now we are moving from agile to scaled agile, right? So that's where the culture difference happened, and our recommendation was first to move from waterfall to agile. So second piece is majority of the large industries, they used to go with licensed software. That's a big cost driver. So what we did is we evaluated the application stack and looked at how can we move them from a licensed to open source, right? So 80% of those were moved to open source. That was a huge savings. I will come to the architecture piece. Then we went and looked at, do we have an automation roadmap, right? Because if you need to have a real DevOps, you need to have a roadmap, you need to have a thought process, and how can we bring those silos, right? Testing is a silo, development is a silo, operations is a silo. How can we bring all of them and build our DevOps, right? So how can we bring them synergies between them? And that is where the automation started from, right from building a software to testing it to deploying it. Entire journey, which we call it as a CI/CD pipeline, how can that be entirely automated? So we built that, we created that DevOps journey. Then this client had about 50 odd data centers. And we said, okay, this is a big maintenance. The OpEx cost is huge for this. So we moved them into cloud. We decommissioned all these data centers. And imagine a situation like now, what we are operating in unprecedented times. The clients are very scared of their data, people working from home, right? You talk about a GCP, you talk about a AWS or Azure, they comes with built-in security. But if you look at on-prem applications, your security is built by you. So that becomes even more important. Then what we looked at, this is where the business IT, that mindset change and the bonding comes through. We clearly decide what are the functional areas. So if you look at an industry as an order management process, a inventory process, supply chain process, shipping process, can we build those as micro containers, right? Rather than having a big blob of monolithic code, which is unmanageable, unmaintainable, can we break them into containers so that each container can be managed by a group of people who actually are the specialists of that group, and changes can be faster. Imagine with the power of DevOps being moved into scaled agile, now you are cutting down the big blob of code into smaller micro containers, how things will be immediately fast. Changes can be done instantly, right? So that's the whole process, and that in this process, we almost kind of reduced 80% of the technical debt sitting in that big blob of code. Right? So this was our recommendation. So how did we do that? If you move to the next slide. So we did it in a two-step process, right? And majority of the time you will see these kind of transformation that we didn't aspire to do it all in one, right? We first said, okay, let's change the delivery model. Let's convince the client, both when I talk about client IT and business, right? Yes, leadership was convinced. Now the key stakeholders on ground, which is IT and business, they were convinced, because it really needs a change in the lifestyle, how you think. Writing massive 60, 80, 100 pages of requirements to writing a small user story. It's a big shift. So we trained our clients, coached our clients. While we coached ourselves, we moved the delivery model to a more agile, distributed agile. We wanted to test, saying that how can we do this from multiple geographies? People sitting across 3, 4 geographies, distributed agile. We decoupled their applications. We bring in a SOA methodology. Before even we went to going to the DevOps and cloud, we got into a SOA methodology. So that's where the concept of API, the real calls to downstream systems, upstream systems happened. And then we eliminated technical debt by decoupling this. The third step was to implement the DevOps, defining their automation roadmap, implementing the DevOps so that the development team, test team, and operations team are together, agree on the automation framework, agree on the tools, technologies, and you build the CI/CD pipeline. While we did that, decommissioned the data center, moved them to the cloud, and then we stopped. We operated there for some time, and that's when with the business IT kind of intervention happened, and we finalized on what are our real containers. And these containers then started to operate in silos, and they were the real owners of those containers. That team was the real owner of those containers. And now you will see the products are getting launched very fast. It's one-click deployment. An outage happens, you don't have to sit in the call for 12 hours, 13 hours. It's deployed quick. Automation went to a certain extent that using your Dockers, Kubernetes is so intelligent that if a pod is dying, it is intelligent enough to know that pod is dying without disrupting your application. It will automatically spin up another pod and let that pod die so that you don't feel a difference. So that much of automation has happened in the entire journey of this transformation. And while we did all this, it took us a good 13 to 16 months time, but we are now up and running. We are now moving into the next step of agile to scaled agile and completely bringing DevOps to DevSecOps, right? How security completely inbuilt within the journey. The next slide, if you can move to the next slide, please. I'm not going to drain through this slide. This is what I call the DevSecOps. All the security tools, starting from a developer when he builds a code, how do we ensure the code is secured when moving from one phase of the software delivery lifecycle to the other phase of the SDLC, and then finally when it goes to before it goes to production, how does we ensure that both the UI piece as well as the core logic are secured enough, because most of our applications are internet facing right now. So this is how the entire structure kind of built through. If you move to the probably the last slide, these are some of the benefits, right? Staggering numbers. And when we talk about benefits, unless and until we bring the benefit of business benefit, IT benefit can happen with a technology change, with a tools change, but you can see those business benefits to the what has happened. Product launches which used to take 18 weeks, 50% reduction. These are products like large scale products, and minor features are like in hours, 2 hours. Automatic scalability. Imagine a data center, if you want to scale, you go through your procurement channel, get another server, put it in. It takes ages. Now it is instant because it's cloud. It's elastic cloud, and you can scale up and down whenever you want to. And then the absolute zero interruption on business. Now a release goes into production with zero downtime. This was never heard of earlier. So this is the power of agile, DevOps, cloud, and microservices, right? And DASA are doing a fantastic job in bringing in the DevOps code, because DevOps is the engine, right? Engine sitting in the middle and providing you that power to sail through with your agile and microservices or whatever it is. But the engine is DevOps. So with that, Anant, I'll hand it back to you. This is the transformation journey that we went through, and I'm sure every industry would be going through this process or would be aspiring it to go through this journey.
Thank you. Thanks, Deb, for lucidly, I think, taking us through this journey. There were a couple of questions that I saw, and I do want to ask you that. You spoke, especially the last one, when you spoke about bringing the business benefits. That really hit home. I think about the conversations that we have had about it being business centric. I want to get your perspective in terms of what are some of the challenges you faced in the journey in terms of getting different types of stakeholders along with you. So there are the IT stakeholders, there are the business stakeholders, there are potentially suppliers, as I had mentioned, outside the ecosystem, but now they are part of the expanded ecosystem as well. And people with having been used to doing a certain way. You alluded to that in the beginning. I may have done waterfall, the release planning was elaborate, and now I need to really do it very fast. What were some of those challenges, and how did you go about addressing that? Because it will also give us a perspective of the relevance of somebody like a DevOps coach in terms of what their responsibility may be in this sort of a journey.
Very, very great question, Anand. And whenever if you are looking at large organizations and you start driving change, the first thing you come to know is why, and a lot of questions, right? Because they are used to this culture, they are used to it, and changing from there is difficult. But in this case, we have taken small pieces, right? The agile was not implemented across the board. You will find a stakeholder who will be willing to kind of invest. And this is seeing is believing, and exactly the same thing happens here as well. Unless you do a prototype, unless somebody sees the value, will not embrace. And that was the biggest challenge we faced. And probably the first three months or so, it's more of prototyping and more questions of why than how or what, right? Why do we do this? We already
Mm.
have this. So I think I'm pretty sure there will be at least one or two people within the organization who will be ready to invest, and you should be able to tap onto them rather than thinking, okay, I am going to do all through at once. Right? I think that's the mantra of success. And now you cannot imagine when we are moving from agile to scaled agile. You can imagine the PI plannings that happens, right? You will see the business, IT, operations, upstream, downstream, everybody sitting in one room and looking at eye to eye, talking to each other. So that's the mindset shift which has happened from where they were in the waterfall model, operating from a different building with their own teams, IT sitting somewhere else. Now everybody is sitting in one room, talking one language. And it is all for the business. So I think that value realization has happened.
Mm.
I hope I
And
answered
it
the
may
question.
perhaps even address a question. Yeah, it may also address another question, which was pointed by, I think, Veena, which was about building trust and credibility taking time. And I think the timelines that you have put together and what you explained also gives a little bit of a perspective. It's not an overnight journey. I think it takes patience. It takes for us to build some of the advocates within the system to take along with us. And today it looks, I think second nature, but I'm sure there is a lot of gory stuff that would have happened to get to the state. So building trust and
Absolutely.
credibility is also a journey. Yeah.
And one last thing I would also kind of mention here is make sure you take along your client with you. So if you are building a team, make sure you have 2 or 3 client stakeholders inside the team so that they will be your champions, and that's how you can scale. Never take the credit by yourself. Have shared success. I think that
Mm.
way it will very well.
So we started referring to shared objective, and you bring in a great point about also sharing shared success. Thanks very much, Dev. Please stay back if you have any additional questions later on. We'll address it to you. So that
Absolutely.
was as a strategic partner that Dev spoke about how he drove a transformation for a client of his.